Forget marble statues. The ancient world was a grim spectacle, run by divine hunters who demanded human sacrifice and destroyed lives on a whim. We're peeling back the layers of their madness. This is Shroud of Lore.
While Achilles in bloody madness strangled the invulnerable son of Poseidon with his own helmet straps, and cunning Odysseus condemned the wisest Palamedes to death by stoning through vile slander, the Greeks spent 9 years sacking cities and selling Priam's children into slavery, seeking to drown their conscience in the gold and ashes of doomed Troy. But that descent into savagery had not yet begun. First, there was the beach. Ajax stood at the prow of his ship, watching the Trojan shore draw closer through the morning mist. After 10 years of preparation, oaths, and sacrifices, the moment had finally arrived. 1,000 ships behind him, 100,000 warriors ready for glory, and yet no one moved. The prophecy held them frozen. The first man to touch Trojan soil will die, Calchas had announced before they left Aulis. This is the price the fates demand. 1 life to purchase the war. Now, with the beach just a spear's throw away, that prophecy hung over the fleet like an executioner's blade. Ajax could see it in the faces of his men, the hunger for glory warring with the simple animal desire to survive. Heroes who had crossed the sea to win immortal fame suddenly found reasons to adjust their armor, to check their weapons, to wait for someone else to go first. Cowards, Ajax thought. All of them. But even as the judgment formed in his mind, he found his own feet rooted to the deck. He was Ajax the Great, strongest of all the Greeks save Achilles himself. He feared no man, no army, no challenge of strength or skill. And yet the idea of stepping off this ship, of being the sacrifice that fed the hungry prophecy, a movement caught his eye. On a ship nearby, a young warrior was climbing onto the railing. Ajax recognized him, Protesilaus of Phylace, newly married, barely tested in battle, one of the minor princes who had joined the expedition more for duty than glory. He was slight compared to the great heroes, unremarkable in every way. Except that he was moving when everyone else stood still. Protesilaus, someone shouted. What are you doing? The young man turned. His face was pale but calm, and in his eyes Ajax saw something that made his own heart clench with shame, acceptance. Pure and complete acceptance of what was about to happen. Someone must be first, Protesilaus said. His voice carried across the water with strange clarity. Someone must pay the price. Why not me? You have a wife, Ajax called out. You were married just weeks ago. Think of her. I am thinking of her. Protesilaus smiled, and there was no fear in it. I am thinking of the story she will tell our children, that their father opened the gates of Troy, that his sacrifice made victory possible. What greater gift could I leave her? Before anyone could respond, he jumped. The splash seemed to echo across the entire fleet. Ajax watched Protesilaus wade through the shallows, watched him raise his sword as Trojan defenders rushed to meet him, watched him fight with the desperate brilliance of a man who knows he is already dead. He killed 3 enemies before Hector's spear found his heart. Protesilaus fell on Trojan sand, and the prophecy was fulfilled. The spell broke. Warriors poured over the sides of their ships, splashing through the surf, screaming battle cries as they charged toward the enemy. Ajax went with them, his great shield raised, his spear seeking Trojan flesh. But even as he fought, even as he carved a path through the defenders, he could not stop thinking about the young man who had jumped first. That night, after the beach was secured and the Greeks had established their camp, Ajax walked to where Protesilaus' body lay. Someone had cleaned the wound and crossed his hands over his chest. In death, he looked even younger than he had in life. You were braver than all of us, Ajax said quietly. We stood frozen while you paid the price. We let you die so we could live. He knelt beside the body and made a silent vow. This war would be fought with honor. Protesilaus' sacrifice would mean something. The Greeks would be worthy of the gift he had given them. It was a vow Ajax would spend the next 9 years watching his comrades break. The war should have ended quickly. The Greeks had numbers, heroes, divine favor. Troy had walls. Walls and time. 9 years, Ajax watched the army transform. 9 years of stalemate, of frustrated ambition, of glory-hunger curdling into something darker. The heroes who had crossed the sea to win immortal fame found themselves stuck on a foreign beach, growing older, growing crueler, growing desperate. It started with the raids. Unable to breach Troy's walls, Agamemnon turned the army loose on the surrounding countryside. Allied cities, trading posts, farming villages, anything that might weaken Priam's network of support. At first, the Greeks maintained some pretense of military necessity. They attacked strategic targets. They spared those who surrendered. But as the years dragged on, the pretense faded. Ajax remembered the day Achilles returned from Lyrnessus with a train of captives stumbling behind his chariot. Women mostly, torn from their homes, destined for the tents of Greek warriors who had forgotten they once had wives of their own. Among them was a girl named Briseis, her eyes empty with shock, her wrists raw from the ropes that bound her. The spoils of war, Achilles had called them. Our reward for another glorious victory. Ajax said nothing. What was there to say? They were all complicit. Every raid enriched the army, and every warrior took his share. The gold, the bronze, the human beings treated as currency, it all flowed through the camp like blood through veins, keeping the war machine alive. But some crimes were harder to ignore. Sickness was the son of Poseidon, blessed with skin that no weapon could pierce. When he stood against the Greeks on the beach of Troy, arrows bounced off him like rain off stone. Swords shattered. Spears splintered. He laughed at the greatest warriors in Greece, mocking their helplessness. Then Achilles found another way. Ajax had not witnessed the killing, but he heard the stories. How Achilles had knocked sickness down and knelt on his chest. How he had torn off the Trojan's helmet and wrapped the leather straps around his throat. How he had pulled tighter and tighter, watching sickness's face turn purple, watching the light fade from his eyes, while the invulnerable body thrashed and failed to save itself. He could not be stabbed, Achilles explained afterward, his voice utterly calm. So I found something that worked. It was efficient. It was clever. It was also the act of a man who had stopped seeing enemies as human beings. The war continued. Cities burned. Priam's children, those who could be captured, were sold to slave traders or claimed as prizes. Ajax watched it all, said little, and felt something dying inside him with each passing season. Then came Palamedes. He was perhaps the wisest man in the Greek army, an inventor, a strategist, a voice of reason in councils dominated by pride and rage. He had devised the system of watches that kept the camp safe. He had invented a game of dice to keep the soldiers' minds occupied during the long siege. He had even helped develop the signals that allowed the fleet to communicate across distances. He had also humiliated Odysseus once, years ago, by exposing his false madness at Ithaca. Odysseus never forgot. Odysseus never forgave. Ajax was there when the accusation came. Gold had been found in Palamedes' tent, along with a letter, forged, as Ajax would later learn, suggesting he had been bribed by Priam to betray the Greeks. The evidence was flimsy, the setup transparent to anyone who bothered to look closely. No one looked closely. The army was tired, frustrated, hungry for someone to blame. Palamedes had always been too clever, too critical, too willing to question the decisions of kings. Now they had an excuse to silence him. "This is wrong," Ajax said at the trial. "Palamedes has served us faithfully for 9 years. He deserves a proper defense, a proper investigation, the evidence speaks for itself," Odysseus interrupted smoothly. "Unless you, suggesting we ignore treason in our midst?" Ajax looked around the assembly. He saw Agamemnon's cold indifference, Menelaus's righteous anger, the bloodlust in 100 warriors' eyes. They had already decided. They wanted a victim, and Palamedes was convenient. "I'm suggesting we remember who we are," Ajax said. "We came here as heroes. When did we become executioners?" No one answered. The silence was its own verdict. They stoned Palamedes that evening, in a hollow outside the camp. Ajax refused to participate, but he did not stop it. He stood at the edge of the crowd and watched the wisest man he knew crumple under a hail of rocks, watched the blood spray across the sand, watched the light leave those intelligent eyes. When it was over, Odysseus met his gaze and smiled. "Justice," the king of Ithaca said, "has been served." The body lay where it had fallen. No one would touch it. Ajax waited until nightfall. Then he walked alone to the execution ground, carrying a shovel and a shroud. The body was already stiffening. Ajax wrapped it carefully, trying not to look at the ruined face. His hands shook, not from effort, but from rage so deep it felt like drowning. 9 years. 9 years of watching his comrades transform into something unrecognizable. They had crossed the sea as heroes. Now they were butchers wearing heroes' armor. He dug the grave in hard-packed earth, each shovelful a small act of defiance. "I see you." Ajax spun. Odysseus stood at the edge of the hollow, arms crossed. "Burying a traitor," Odysseus said. "The kings would not be pleased. He was not a traitor. You framed him. I removed an obstacle." Odysseus stepped closer. Palamedes was too clever, too critical. Wars cannot be won by committee. This is war, Ajax. The only sin is losing. Ajax stared at him, this cunning man who had woven lies into a noose. For a moment, he considered raising his shovel, ending this with violence. But that was what Odysseus wanted. "Go back to your tent," Ajax said quietly. "I'm going to finish burying my friend. You know what your problem is?" Odysseus began walking away. "You still believe in heroes. You still think there's honor in this war." His voice floated back through darkness. "There is not. We came here for gold and pride. The only difference between you and me is that I've accepted what we are." He disappeared into the night. Ajax finished the burial as dawn broke. He marked the grave with a simple stone, no name, nothing to tell who lay beneath. Then he sat beside the mound, watching the camp come alive in the distance. 9 years since Protesilaus jumped. The young man had believed his sacrifice would open the gates of Troy. Instead, the Greeks had turned it into the first act of a decade-long descent into savagery. Even if Troy fell tomorrow, they would not truly win. They would sail home as conquerors but arrive as hollow men. Their families would not recognize them. They would spend their lives trying to wash off stains that no water could touch. Ajax rose and walked back to camp. Outside his tent, he began removing his armor, not the practical pieces, but the trophies. Golden ornaments, bronze cups, gemstones pried from Trojan swords. He piled them in the dirt. His men gathered, confused. "Take them," Ajax said. "I do not want them anymore. My lord, this is a fortune, they re the spoils of crimes I should never have committed." His voice was final. "I came here to be a hero. I became a thief and a witness to murder. I see not undo it, but I can stop adding to the weight." He walked to the beach where Protesilaus had made his fatal leap. The war would continue. Troy might fall, or stand forever, Ajax was no longer sure it mattered. But he would not become what Odysseus had become. He would hold whatever shreds of honor remained, even standing alone against his own army's villainy. It was not much. It would not save the war or redeem the dead. But it was all he had left. The walls would fall. The city would burn. The victors would sail home to find they had left the best parts of themselves buried in foreign sand. For now, there was only Ajax, and the grave, and the weight of 9 years pressing down on a soul that had finally learned what it cost to win a war that should never have been fought.